Hello and welcome, and a big welcome back to those of us and of you guys who joined us in webinar 1. My name is Christina, and on behalf of myosh, we are so thrilled to have you joining us for session 2 of our Strategy for Safety series, proudly presented by FEFO Consulting. Now, today's session is all about how to build to win and what that really means when it comes to aligning your strategy, your people, and your power to create lasting safety outcomes. Now, we've got 2 incredible speakers with us today. First, Nicole Kidman, a strategic executive from Journey Beyond with deep expertise in operational excellence, risk leadership, and bringing safety to life across dynamic and high-stakes environments. Joining her is the lovely Rachel Fitzgerald, the partner at FEFO Consulting, a leader in safety transformation, cultural change, and an executive engagement. Rachel brings an absolute wealth of experience helping organisations shape strategies that work in the real world. Now, together, they'll be unpacking how you guys can align your teams, build the right capacity and capability, and influence effectively across your whole organisation. Just like last time and all of our webinars before, we really want this to be a two-way conversation. So please make sure you jump into that chat box, share your thoughts, drop your questions, and connect with us throughout. I'll be keeping an eye on all of the comments, so we'll try and answer as many as possible. And at the end, if we have time, we'll have a little Q&A session too. So don't stress if we don't get to you during the session. So let's get ready, hey, because it's actually time to build a strategy that wins. Let's dive in and I'll hand it over to you, Rach.
Thanks so much, Christina. I'm really excited to be back for our second session today, as you said, and especially to have Nicole joining as our co-host with me as well. So I'm also keen to share, obviously, Nicole's experiences with safety strategy and how you've worked to align strategy, people, and influence your organisations to drive meaningful change. So for those of us who aren't aware or know about FEFO, so we are a purpose-driven health and safety advisory firm, and we support businesses strive for excellence and build high performance. So just quickly, I'd like to hand over to Nicole so she can introduce herself and give a bit of background about her career and insights.
Thank you, Rachel and Christina. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here and involved with this important webinar this afternoon. So my background, or certainly my current role in any rate, is the General Manager of Health, Safety and Environment, or Group Safety with Journey Beyond. Journey Beyond is an experiential tourism provider that operates 17 brands across Australia and has an incredibly diverse sort of risk profile, which naturally necessitates a need to develop group-wide thinking around how do we bring a sort of cohesive safety strategy together across a really diverse set of individual organisations. Previous to my just over 12 months at Journey Beyond, I spent 10 years at ASC, so the Submarine Corporation, and the last number of those years as the head of work health, safety and environment, looking after the Collins class sustainment and the strategy that supported the sustainment maintenance activities for the submarines. And I've also worked across construction in both safety and roles in human resources, so for John Holland and for the Lend-Lease Group, and more recently for that, before that in investment banking. So my experience is, certainly from an industry perspective, is fairly diverse, but certainly the role that I'm in now presents some really interesting challenges, and I'll explain some of those challenges as we move through the material today.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Nicole. It's great having you on board. So I think to start off, we might just recap from webinar 1. So we laid the groundwork for strategy. We looked at a case for change, so gaining buy-in, bridging the gap between current and future state, and also clarified the difference between strategy and a plan. So vision and identity, so starting with who you are, looking at clear vision and values that's to guide better decisions than jumping straight into KPIs. And also where to play, where we explored how to decide where to focus and where not to, and where obviously you're going to get the most impact. A key takeaway we'd probably like to highlight is at the start of the session, we did a poll and 57% of participants felt their organisation strategy was effective. And then once we moved through our program or our webinar, we redid the poll and insights was it actually reduced to 32%. So I guess a key insight from that takeaway, or that webinar, I should say, is that maybe people actually started to think that maybe their identity and vision probably maybe wasn't set right, or they veered off course a little bit. So hopefully this sets the stage for today's focus on actually how to win and building capability. So again, it might shift your thinking around, is your safety strategy effective at the moment? So we're looking, obviously, as we said, how to win. And we're looking at discovering how to win in your unique context. So creating the right capacity and capability and learning methods to influence across the organisation. So to dive in, we talk about, is your strategy executed well? So it's not just about having a good strategy, it's actually about getting it done. So Harvard Business Review has said that 67% of well thought out strategies actually fail due to poor execution. So the ideas are usually fine, but it's actually about making them stick that's probably the hard part. And we referenced back in webinar 1 as well about, working at the right level. So I think we used a Toyota Corolla as an example. So they're reliable, consistent, and fit for purpose, like for a family car. And just being, I guess, okay with being, you want to be a Toyota Corolla, you don't want to then decide to compete to be a Rolls Royce or a Jaguar. It's really kind of just being comfortable in the space you're in and getting the right balance too about making strategy work in the real world. So I'd love to pass to Nicole and understand you've had success in this space and what's actually helped you execute your strategy and keep the momentum going.
Great. Look, it's certainly certainly, I guess at the outset, what I would say is that we are still very early into our HSE strategy journey at Journey Beyond. So our strategic span that we set was Q4 2024 out to Q4 2027. So a 3.5 year, or just under sort of 3.5 year sort of strategic span, which we hope would really enable us to obviously affect the sort of cultural change that we were looking for. I think to start, though, probably for us, it was having a really solid strategy development process, which we then overlaid, obviously, with the results of our externally facilitated safety culture survey and WHS maturity assessment. But more importantly, those aspects were underpinned by a really clear business goal. Establishing key result areas, and we're able to establish those key result areas or sort of strategic pillars against our what are known as aspects of our safety culture survey, and being absolutely focused on the work that would move the dial for us culturally and avoiding unnecessary pivots. So staying the course was absolutely key for us. We made sure every strategic initiative had an OKR. We also, and as part of our OKRs, we use lag, lead and sentiment OKRs, and that our more traditional key performance indicators, so our injury frequencies and our hazard reporting, etc., could tell a real-time story of what we were trying to achieve. We also use project management software. So we use Monday.com, and it was really important in terms of the execution steps of our strategy that we had some really good discipline around the way that we collaborated, monitored and communicated strategic process or progress rather through Monday.com. And part of certainly success is the ability to, measure and monitor. And designing a governance framework really helped us leverage a sort of strategic feedback loop. And I use something that I've used in other organisations, which is the Australian Institute of Company Directors Trigger governance model, which has this really unique way of being able to balance compliance and performance, and really helps us keep this HSE strategy consistently on the radar, certainly at Journey Beyond. Communicating often. I can't stress this one enough, particularly small wins or improvements. It doesn't have to be big bang communication, but keeping safety front of mind. Don't let your organisations at any point lose interest in the journey that you're trying to take them on. And being resilient. There are going to be tough weeks and months. There's no doubt about that. The data is going to tell you the opposite of what it is that you're trying to achieve. But culture change takes time. It takes a long time. And you need to really make sure that you can manage the expectations of not just your executive team or your board, but also your employees around change as it's deployed and what you're expecting and hoping to achieve from that change.
Wonderful. Thanks, Nicole. That's great insight. And I hope a few of the participants online feel or understand some of the aspects you're talking about on winning. And I guess, opposite to winning is sometimes we fail. And sometimes we fail from time to time. And it's not, I think, uncommon when we talk about safety strategy in general. But you can see, obviously, there's some common themes. So maybe it could be often irrelevant or focused on the wrong things, built from a top-down approach, competing with other priorities, which is something you touched on, Nicole, as well, is that making safety forefront and, it's integrated and embedded in day-to-day versus just on the side. And then missing a real feedback loop. You also said, Nicole, too, that's a key feature, is having that real-time feedback loop. But obviously we know there's ways to turn this around. So using the structured approach to making strategic choices, developing in collaboration, key, addressing obviously capability gaps and building real-time feedback loops, just so, as we said, it's not shelfware. So I guess just to say from a FEFO perspective, we're not immune to this either. Like many businesses, we've had times where competing priorities have really pulled our focus and shifted us in different directions. Felt much like we're chasing what's urgent versus not what's strategic. And I guess the lesson for FEFO was having a strategy doesn't mean the distractions go away. What it means is that we ourselves have to put a filter in or a robust framework to actually have a clear vision of, no, this isn't part of it, or just not yet. So that was a key thing for us that we're really pushing forward on. So if it doesn't really fit our strategic choices or aligns to our strategy, it's just not something we're going to do, and we have to have a hard line on that. Nicole, have you seen these barriers actually, or have you come across others?
Yeah, my experience would be largely the same in terms of what you have on screen. Perhaps even more so a combination of maybe 1 and 3, and kind of more broadly being really clear about or understanding with absolute clarity the needs of your business. I think Journey Beyond as an organisation is quite a complex kind of multi-asset and risk profiled organisation. And as I said at the outset, we operate across 17 tourism brands, which is quite significant. And all of those different brands or business units operate with varying seasonality, maturity and geographical constraints. So we operate in the sort of far-flung reaches of Arnhem Land, we operate in North Queensland, we operate remote Western Australia, and everywhere in between. So for us, it's about being able to execute a strategy in a way that fits within the organisation. So being prepared, I think, to exercise an awful lot of flexibility. We can't practically execute things all at once or deploy strategic activity all at once in an organisation like Journey Beyond. And I guess an example of that is that we are executing at the moment, I'll talk a bit more about that later, or rather we're deploying a new HSE management system. And we're doing that one business unit at a time over a period of 12 months. And we're doing that because we need to align to their particular seasons of operating. We aren't going to become burdensome in an operational perspective for each of our businesses. We need to make sure that we can fit within the operational needs and wants of each of the different tourism brands that we operate.
Thanks for that, Nicole. I think now what we'd love to now ask is from our audience. So we know some of the common barriers, obviously, are competing priorities and poor feedback loops. Christina's actually just going to launch a poll at the moment, but we want to hear from you. So what's getting in the way of strategy in your world? So is it any one of the 4 that we've spoken about, or is it something completely different?
I'd love to mention here as well, just going back to the previous slide, you don't have to go back, but I often find with strategy failing, the next level after a poor feedback loop is when you have that feedback and you get that feedback back, but nothing comes of it. So it's not closing that feedback loop. It may be poor. You may have a really good feedback loop, but the next step is actually integrating conscious effort and change after you receive that feedback. That helps you grow even further. And I think that might be some like option number 5 or something, even to sort of point out where strategy might fail as opposed to succeed. Because it's all well and good getting the feedback, but if you don't do anything with it, like, what's the point, you know? So we've had some responses come back in. So where is your strategy getting stuck? So far, the majority of people are saying competing priorities. To me, that makes the most sense. What about to you guys?
Yeah, it does. I think with competing priorities, it kind of just talks around going, are we making clear choices about where to play and where not to? So that's the key. Is it within the sphere of what we're trying to achieve, our main goal, or is it just some noise on the side? What are your thoughts, Nicole?
Yeah, I agree. And I think if I look at it with my sort of operational hat on, if I think about competing business priorities, that's where the value in a really clear implementation plan is really key. Sort of consistent with the example I gave around how we're deploying our system. You know, in a perfect world, we would do a big bang launch of our system across our organisation, but we've obviously actively chosen to make sure that we're not competing for the time of each of those business units when they're their absolute busiest. So we've taken an approach to be very careful and clear about how we execute to somewhat avoid or at least work in with how we can manage against competing priorities.
I think in that you are creating a perfect world, though, because you're not interrupting everybody all at once. Like you're doing it perfectly. Like it's a perfect strategy almost.
Hopefully with minimal disruption. Ideally, that's the main objective there. Well, that's really good. It's great to get insights on where you guys are getting stuck. So hopefully through our session, we can provide some insights into how to tackling competing priorities and how to obviously manage the noise, I guess, we've said as well. So I guess this kind of brings us to context of our second webinar. As we said, we'll be focusing on building to win. So also wanted to mention as well, if you haven't already registered for our third webinar, our last one, you get to hear from Adam Jackson, who's recently started in a global safety role with JLL. So we look forward to hearing more from his new role and some insights around measuring what matters and tracking inputs and not just outputs as well. So we're following our step-by-step process for creating an effective health and safety strategy. So concepts are largely adapted actually from the book Playing to Win. So we've created some great tools and resources aligned to this as well. So if you're interested in a free resource, so just grab your phone. We do have a QR code on the screen now. And so the development of this resource is really just to provide guidance to organisations to develop and deploy an effective strategy. So we're focusing on steps 3 and 4. We're going to explore areas of strategic alignment, so ensuring safety strategy isn't just on the side. Do your people have the right skills, the time and tools to bring the strategy to life? And some influence techniques. So how can you positively influence across the organisation to get real traction? So this is, I guess, where a strategy stops becoming a document and starts becoming actually how you operate. So because a strategy without execution is just a plan on a paper. So we're going to look at segments, stakeholder mapping, and business integration. So let's explore how we apply the how. So using contractors and critical control management, just as an example, we've used one of our approaches, which is called Keep, Stop, Start. So what we want to do is we want to have a look at what we keep doing. So what's delivering value in the organisation or in the business? Then we want to have a look at what do we need to stop doing because it's not working or it's just draining our resources. And that means draining resources in time, cost, and technology as well, potentially. And what should we start doing to improve focus and outcomes? So again, one of the key takeaways from webinar 1 was the importance of being firm. So having the courage to decide when not to play, and the role of the keep, stop, start approach helps you choose and refine those actions to maximise your impact. So Nicole, I believe you've done the keep, stop, start approach. How has this helped your organisation focus, and what difference has that made?
Yeah, I've been using keep, stop, start as a method probably for a number of years now. We used this to gather sort of strategic inputs as part of our strategy development process last year. And we also leveraged technology as well. And I'm sure many of you would be familiar with the Mentimeter application, which for us really helped us track and kind of rack and stack, I guess, our feedback, but in a really inclusive way, as we have a number of, I guess, geographically widespread team members. So we wanted, certainly from a broader functional team perspective, the right level of opportunity for them to be able to provide their inputs and gain their buy-in ultimately. And we certainly found using the keep, stop, start method and a really positive and unique sort of way in which we could do that. Probably another way in which we've sort of segmented, I guess, some of our decision making when it comes to strategy is that we've also, as an organisation, we made a conscious decision that our business units obviously needed a tailored approach to safety improvement more broadly, and they would actually own and measure their own operational action plans, whilst the sort of more group-wide priorities would be articulated in our new HSE strategy.
So it's really kind of delegating ownership and accountability down to, your different businesses, but then also at a high level kind of bringing it all together.
Correct.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of maybe leads into a stakeholder mapping. So another approach is the stakeholder map we've got here, the simple one. So with influence on the vertical axis and support on the horizontal. So this tool helps us get clear on who's with us, who we need to win over, and who might be blocking progress. That could be intentional or unintentional. So knowing who your allies are and who holds influence or control is critical, as it allows you to be strategic in how you engage, communicate, and build momentum. Sometimes it's actually not about pushing harder with, as we say, your resistors. Sometimes it's actually just engaging smarter. So small wins with the right people can unlock bigger shifts in the organisation. It might get you some more wins across the board, or if you're influencing the right people or bringing more supporters in, those resistors might slowly start to actually turn and actually start to become a supporter as well. So Nicole, based on your experience, what advice could you give someone who's actually starting this journey?
Almost exactly as you've just set it up, Rach. I think identifying your allies early is absolutely key, and focusing or investing your time in building and developing those relationships. You can't please everyone, and I certainly would recommend not over-investing time in trying to appease those who just aren't on board yet. I think it's a much more positive experience to really harness the influence of your supporters and allies than necessarily, desperately trying to win over the detractors or the resistors, so to speak. Ultimately, if the strategy is right, the support will follow. It just takes time.
That's kind of how I think if you keep pushing through the momentum and going through, and obviously if there's metrics that are showing successes, as you said as well, it takes time to do it. So it's not going to be, it's not a right now thing. It's in, a longer period of time, but they'll slowly start to come around because maybe the performance is there and they can see the change and the positivity in it. So it's a really good thing to obviously look at. As you can see, we've got a nice, beautiful puppy there as well. They're great support. They're always, happy to see you and stuff like that, but really low influence versus obviously you're looking like a leader, so a Clydesdale horse up the top there, high influence, but they're also really positive. So it's just, got to look out for some of those crocs and pesky mosquitoes as well. But obviously your allies are your Clydesdale and your puppies, and obviously build on those relationships too. I'd like to, I guess, lead in now around business integration. So good safety and good business. I'll hand over to Nicole to lead this one.
Yeah, and thanks, Rach. So when I first joined Journey Beyond, obviously I set about, as most leaders do when they join a new organisation, to learn as much as I possibly could about a fundamentally different landscape. I had come from defence industry and spent 10 years in that industry, and then I had effectively joined Australia's largest experiential tourism provider. So fundamentally different sort of asset profile and, you know, a much more sort of complex risk profile. As I was learning more and more about the organisation that I joined, it became evident that we weren't necessarily going to strive to be the Rolls-Royce of safety, as per the analogy that sort of Rachel shared earlier. Rather, as a business, we could actually feel really good about being a really solid Toyota Corolla. And that's not trying to downplay our organisation and its effort or its focus at all. Really what we wanted to do was focus on creating improved engagement through consistency, reliability, and fit-for-purpose outcomes. And that became very important to us. And once we really established, I think as a business, that we weren't necessarily going to strive for high performance, it helped to align our HSE strategic purpose to our overall vision as a business, which is creating lasting memories for our guests. So our underpinning strategic goal became safe and engaged employees will deliver an enhanced guest experience. This resonated widely throughout the business and very much became the anchor for our HSE strategy. We used our safety culture survey results, previous engagement results, and we also used our Net Promoter Score. So our Net Promoter Score, for those that are not within this industry, is how we ostensibly measure our guest experience and feedback. And we reviewed all of that data to understand any correlation between the data. And naturally, we found loads of correlation between the data. What we found was that the businesses with lower cultural maturity were also the businesses with less satisfied guests. So for us, that absolutely became, you know, our reason for being as a function, and it really gave a lot of credibility to our HSE strategy because we were going to move the dial culturally, and we were also going to help support the achievement of the organisation's vision.
Always sometimes about that hook line, isn't it? With good safety, good business. And we'll talk obviously later on that, how to influence, obviously from a health and safety professional into operational business as well. So we'll now move into capability and capacity, and we're really looking at it through the supply versus demand lens. So it's easy to focus on the people side of resourcing. But when we say resources, we're actually talking more about like more than just your team. So it's systems, tools, technology, all of those in one. So what I'd actually like to do is hand over to Nicole to talk actually about enabling execution.
I think many organisations, and I say many, if not all, and almost all organisations, obviously are currently sort of grappling with this concept at the moment of balancing or having a balanced focus on both physical and psychological safety. We have a relatively small functional health, safety and environmental team at Journey Beyond. So in order for us to get, I guess, an additional group working toward our health, wellbeing and risk strategic outcomes, we convened a group of passionate advocates in health and wellbeing, and they've become our champions and almost an extension of my team. A little bit like HSRs or health and safety reps being an extension of the safety team. We will involve that group in a series of workshops next month, so using Keep, Stop, Start, where we're going to start to define really clearly areas of focus around our psychosocial hazard categories, which is a really exciting piece of work for us. But we can't do that without the support of a broader group of individuals who are very capable and obviously offer some really different sets of experiences. Similarly, psychosocial risk certainly can't be owned by HSE in isolation. We co-own this with our functional HR team, and we leverage their skills in things like work design to sort of help further this important piece of work. enabling execution, particularly for organisations that don't have, thousands of safety professionals, is really about utilising what you've got internally and also looking for opportunities to partner with, obviously, solid external support as well.
That's good. I really like, obviously, leveraging in-house capability. So I think we've done some pieces on this before. It's, safety and HR are a partnership in a lot of aspects, and sounds like Nicole around psychosocial it is as well. They've got some real good in-house capability, so why not partner with them? This moves on to also our capability performance assessment.
So what you can see in front of you is our capability WHSC performance assessment. So as part of our strategic development process, as I said, which we undertook at the end of Q1 into Q2 of 2024, it was really important for us as a business and important for me as a new person to the organisation and a new person to the industry that we were able to establish an unbiased baseline. And that became very key to our strategic development. So we partnered with FEFO on developing a safety culture survey and WHS maturity assessment. So it was done in two parts. So the maturity assessment included what we call a macro level review of both our group-wide and business unit level safety system. And it also included a series of interviews with some of our key operational leaders. In the centre there, where it says what our people say, that is our group-wide safety culture result, which sat within the capable category, which we were really pleased with. Maybe a little bit surprised, but certainly very pleased. Given the number of business units we have, obviously that data reflects that we had some very high-performing or very positive results in some of our business units, and maybe not such good results in some of our other organisational brands. But I think the reality, once we went through this process, obviously using FEFO, was that our systems of work just didn't keep pace in an organisation that was continually evolving. The operational reality, I guess, in a sense, was sort of very different. Gaining acceptance that our organisation, though, was really developing rather than considered capable when we took into account both the safety culture survey results and the maturity assessment, took some influencing. But I think certainly for us, we used some very clear examples, some direct quotes from leaders, obviously some evidence of some very absent frameworks, and our safety performance KPIs really needed some attention. And all of that really helped to create a story. I think having that unbiased baseline really helped just to generate, or certainly provide right across, not just our C-suite and board and other teams, but right across the business, it provided real credibility to the work that obviously we wanted to achieve.
It's good sometimes just really understanding where the business is at and where they're performing. We talk about the Corolla, so we just really want to get an understanding where we are to then just really become high performing in our space that we're happy with. And it's always as well, obviously, trying to get that influence, then it's kind of like, okay, how do we get the balance right? So when we talk about getting the balance right, we're looking at the relationship between work demand and work supply. So how do we align to support strategic effectiveness? So you can see on the demand side, we're obviously juggling everyday BAU needs, obviously the risk and uncertainty, so unplanned or reactive work, and then also the strategic initiatives we want to drive. So how does obviously all that align together? Then what's on the supply side? So the capability of our people and our systems. So what tools and skills that our people have can we draw on? How much time and energy realistically do our people have? And of course, obviously, like there's other variables like funding, leadership, attention, or culture as well. But these obviously directly impact our strategic effectiveness. So not just whether we can deliver, but like, can we do it well? So Nicole, how have you approached this balance, especially when you're trying to drive strategic improvements without overwhelming your people?
Yeah, look, I think as sort of previously mentioned, I think partnering with other functions in the business is absolutely key. Like HR, when you don't have all of the necessary capability and capacity, and very few safety teams, certainly safety teams that I've been involved in, have all of the necessary capability and capacity, because we're often drawn into operational activities or other activities, obviously, that are important from a business perspective. I think involving other teams or other functional areas like HR as well helps to drive a really people-focused agenda if that's important to your business. It might not be important to every business, certainly was really important to our business. Our CEO is very motivated by employee engagement. So naturally, being able to align how HSE was going to positively influence employee engagement also became really key for us. And as Rach has already set out, being really clear about the space that you won't be playing in. Certainly for us, given our strategy is still very new within our organisation, it was really important that we wanted to obviously avoid overwhelm and also provide the necessary time to develop capability. It's really important to me that we upskill the people we have. Whilst it's great to lean on and leverage external support, ultimately you want your people to obviously come away from this experience with, new sort of skills and experiences. So for Journey Beyond, the areas that we decided we weren't going to play in 2025, so in the first iteration of our HSE strategy, was really around the maturing of our environmental and our contractor management systems. We've started some work in that space, some very basic sort of foundation work, but we're certainly going to be doing some capability uplift of the team, particularly in the environmental management space. And we will next year, 2026, when we sit down and develop the plan for next year, there will be some very key activity in that will effectively build upon the foundation that we're trying to create first. So being very clear about the spaces that you're not playing. We would love to do it all, but the reality is we just don't have the capability and capacity to do it all. So you do need to be a little bit selfish with some of your decision making.
I think that's key. You're right, being really selfish around what we will do and what we won't do, and then really obviously understanding the capacity within the team. Can they do it? Do they have the skills? Yes, no. But then really just obviously that collaboration piece is quite key too. So speaking on capacity, we've got this great metaphor of change. So the ladder with the smaller rungs represents like small achievable steps. Whilst if you look to the right, there's obviously a bigger gap between these rungs, which actually, in hindsight, might actually be harder to climb in the long run. You get fatigued by the end of it. As I said, might be more manageable when you do smaller steps. So might actually make better use of the capacity you have. You might actually be able to understand at a more granular level, do we have the capacity to do this or not? Back to what Nicole was saying, you want to use your in-house team. So that might give them the confidence to actually build on their capability and their skills in a safe space to do so. And obviously it creates a culture of momentum and progress. So, small actions, people might go, yes, this is a win on the board, this is great, versus some milestone that's, really far out or a stretch target. So change is rarely linear. And Nicole, you've recently experienced this. I think it was in your injury management system. Yeah, so like we mentioned the 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So how did your team manage that momentum of progress and like building resilience?
Yeah, just to sort of set the scene. So last year, I guess in parallel with the design and development of a number of our strategic initiatives, we also set about, as a business, improving the management of our significant injuries, as we had a number of significant injuries, and we really looked inwardly to see whether or not they were being managed, and so did we have the underpinning system to enable our business to manage those injuries in a way that was appropriate and was a way that could certainly deliver real benefit to the business. We experienced some really early wins in this space, including significant reduction in workers' compensation premiums, which we were really pleased with at the back end of last year, which also helped us demonstrate a direct business benefit. So that was a great outcome. Our data was improving. We were able to save the business a whole lot of money, which obviously helped the bottom line. So, it was a big tick. 6 months on from that, and some of our data at this point in time suggests a different story. And whilst it could be indulgent to think it's not working, things are going backwards, I think certainly as safety professionals or leaders within our businesses, we need to keep reminding ourselves and our teams that through sustained effort creates cultural change. Stay the course. Maintain resilience to help shock absorb difficult weeks and months. We're all going to have difficult weeks and months. We're going to have a particular business that might be underperforming for a couple of months. That doesn't mean your strategy is not right. So it's very much about creating an environment where the team is able to bounce back from that and continue to look for ways to help support the business through that. Because the last thing we want to do is start again and say, well, it's not working, because real change, it could take years. And the importance of small steps and celebrating those small steps, as we did at the back end of last year, are really, really key. And keep doing that, because the tide will turn again.
I think that's key. It's those small wins and really making sure people latch onto those so that it keeps building your resilience. So when you do have 2 steps back, or you do hit a bit of a resistor, or a long stretch of time before actually getting another win, it's really key to obviously hold on to that. And I guess it's also then, a question might be like, well, how are we creating extra capacity? We're all, we've got so much on, so many competing priorities. What are we actually going to do? So we're looking at optimizing resources, improving efficiencies, and fostering adaptability. So some key strategies could actually be like investing in technology. So what task could you actually automate and streamline workflows to free up like employee time? That could be one. You could develop a learning culture. So encourage continuous skill development, much like Nicole's doing at the moment, really focusing on your employees now and how can you upskill them. Then they become more efficient. They learn a new skill. They feel confident to obviously, push through those really tough times or tough months. Optimize your workforce planning. So use capacity management frameworks to balance workloads and also obviously ultimately prevent burnout. Eliminate non-essential work. So I guess that comes down to keep, stop, start. So you could say stop doing unnecessary meetings. Could this be an email? Do we really need to catch up weekly? Could it be fortnightly? Stuff like that. So that's, I guess, adding in that keep, stop, start approach really will help eliminate non-essential work as well. Enhance your collaboration. So foster your cross-functional teamwork to improve efficiency. So you could utilize data effectively, have a look at that. What could you pull from that to then resource allocate better? Strengthen your leadership. So empower leaders to drive strategic direction and improve operational agility as well. So those are just a few things there. That's just on capacity. But then actually I do have, Nicole, we've got a case study for creating capacity.
Thanks, Rachel. I might just get you to jump to the next slide if you can.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've included a couple of images on screen, and really when we talk about creating capacity, I'm talking about this in the context of a journey beyond. We have made, again, an active choice to improve our foundation to create capacity. So a key strategic priority for us as an organisation, which came off the back of our safety culture survey and maturity assessment, was that we needed to design, develop and implement. So the design and the development was last year, and in 2025 we've set about upon our implementation of a fit-for-purpose HSE management system that could be scaled for growth. Now, that last part of the sentence is really key to an organisation like Journey Beyond, as we have obviously, I guess, an approach at Journey Beyond where we obviously look to operate additional brands, we look to acquire additional brands, and we need a mechanism or a system rather where we can plug and play into our broader acquisition framework, and our new HSE management system is very much enabling us to be able to do that. So the system itself provides for what we call kind of a transparent, easy to use, and importantly, on-the-job approach to managing HSE risk, which is accessed by our web-based app that we've developed in-house, which is called Always Safe. And Always Safe is also a key value of our organisation. So again, another example of how obviously we're trying to make sure everything we do aligns to our broader business and strategic goals. We've set about going through a process to improve and rationalise significantly our document set for each of our operating businesses. And that's developed against a set framework that we've now implemented for the business, which makes it easier for our people on the ground and our leaders to manage HSE risk in a consistent way. And really what underpinned that thinking was if we have an employee that moves between our different businesses, and mobilisation, employee mobility rather, is obviously, I'm sure, probably on a number of organisations' agendas, then we wanted them to have the same safety experience no matter where they were located as when they were working for Journey Beyond. Being scalable for growth and leveraging technology was really key here to create capacity. As I said, it was certainly key rather to our broader business strategy and our plug and play approach. And a direct example of this is certainly for those that would be aware, Journey Beyond is operating as of 24 hours ago, which is exciting, the Monarto Safari Resort here in Adelaide, South Australia. And as part of that, we were able to very clearly and pretty quickly establish the requirements for a safety management system that would support the execution of positive HSE outcomes at the Monarto Safari Resort. We didn't have to start with a blank sheet of paper. We understood exactly what was required. We understood the documents that need to be created, and we're able to make them accessible to all employees who are located out at the Monarto Safari Resort. And the images on screen are obviously intended to show you what it looks like. So this is our web-based app. We are all about heroing the business unit so we can make it easy and accessible for all of our employees. They don't need an internet connection to access the documents that they need to manage risk. So creating those operational efficiencies for our tour guides when they're on the road up in Northern Arnhem Land or up in North Queensland, or when they're out on the pontoon at Horizontal Falls. It didn't matter where they were located. We wanted them to be able to quickly and efficiently gain access to the information that they needed to be able to execute their work. And the system itself obviously has a very clear and consistent document hierarchy and framework. And that was really key. It is no different whether or not you're travelling on the GAN, whether you're out on the pontoon at Horizontal Falls, or whether you're a tour guide or a tour driver operating within our Outback Spirit business. It all looks and feels the same and is all about risk management. So we've gone through quite a significant rationalisation process, I think would be fair to say. We're much clearer now as to the key or most significant risks that we're obviously trying to mitigate as a business, and creating capacity for our leaders, our employees, and also our project teams. As new businesses come into the Journey Beyond family, we needed a really clear and easy way to be able to manage that through our acquisitions. So this is certainly a work in progress. We have implemented this across 5 of our brands so far. Obviously, we've still got a number to go, and we'll be hopefully complete by the end of 2025.
That's really amazing. I loved the idea that your ability to mobilise safety across new businesses or locations, you've completely streamlined that and made that so much easier, especially from obviously the employee perspective as well, having that offline capability to have it at their fingertips essentially. Because I think a lot of businesses and people on the webinar might know as well is that offline capability sometimes for frontline workers is really key. You want to make it really user friendly and accessible to them, obviously, given you can have remote workers like yourself, Nicole, as well. So it's a really good round out for capability and capacity. We're moving now into methods of influence. So we want to look at building a compelling business case that resonates with your audience. So also leading with impact. So using your own behaviour and credibility to guide others, and then creating ownership and accountability. So it's not just your responsibility, it's just shared and sustained across the organisation. So a few things we mentioned earlier as well. So as we shift into influence, a key lever for strategic traction is the ability to present a compelling business case. So whether you're advocating for resources or technology or even a program investment, the framework really helps you ensure you're covering the right bases. So, obviously we've got 6 key elements up on the screen for you guys. So we want to start with clarity. So define the problem. Is it a strategic fit, and what's in it for the business? So that really value piece from an operational perspective. I think we talked about before, that clear hook back for the business if this is what's really valuable for them. So risk and stakeholder impact. So call out all the risks of inaction. So what happens if we don't do anything? and who it impacts from frontline up to executive as well. So financials, so simply show the money. Don't outline the costs, the benefits and value for investment. Your recommended solution, we suggest you don't sit on the fence, make a call and then back it up with evidence. We've mentioned before, implementation plan is quite crucial as well. So you want to make sure you're building confidence with your stakeholders or people of influence and control, that you're clearly outlining how you're going to make that happen. And obviously, lastly, is metrics. So define how you'll measure success over time. So this framework supports the strategy for safety pillars because a good business case, it's a tool for alignment, for capability building, and also influence. So it helps safety professionals speak the language of the business. I know, Nicole, we've mentioned before that safety professionals may feel a little bit out of their depth when it comes to operational conversations or business cases. So we know safety, but we're not always trained in business influence. So Nicole, you're going to actually take us deeper into that challenge and share your experiences about building business acumen and influence in the real world.
Yeah, I think obviously understanding the need to align business goals at the outset is the most important thing that you can do. And our safe and engaged employees delivering an enhanced guest experience had all of the hallmarks of being able to achieve a number of different aspects, which, as I said sort of earlier, really resonated with our business. I think as HSE or HR professionals, we also as leaders need to create our own culture of learning. So whether it be, getting really good at understanding financial performance and governance, read, train, find a mentor, find a coach, these elements, particularly governance and financial performance at both that C-suite and that board level, will always be well understood by them and very much supported at the top. So if you can start to arm yourself through, understanding different models, and as I was talking around earlier, governance has been a really big opportunity for us as a business. We have a board and we provide papers up to that board, and I provide a HSE strategy update every month to that board. So understanding models such as the trigger governance model, which allows you to be able to demonstrate to your boards, your executive teams, that whilst we're still, we don't lose our way completely, we're still very focused on compliance, but we see the value in also where safety can help drive business performance. So that equal balance of both compliance and performance. But it takes time. It takes a lot of reading, invest wherever you can in your own development, I think, because if we can be certainly the best versions of ourselves, then we can certainly lead, our teams to greater effect. And also provide opportunities for your team to be involved in these things as well. Often the answer to all of the difficult questions are in the room, as they say. So involving your team in opportunities to, to develop their own acumen as well.
I like that. It's kind of influencing with effective leadership, I think. Obviously knowing and investing in your team too, which is good because we're leading into obviously influencing with effective leadership. So here we have our benchmark data from the Health and Safety Index, and a key insight actually jumps out here. So as you can see, care and concern ranks the highest at 86, whilst clear expectation actually ranks the lowest at 74. So you're probably thinking, well, what does that actually tell us? So what that tells us is most leaders actually genuinely care. So they do care about us and they have good intent at the end of the day. But sometimes that intent isn't always translating into effective and aligned action. So as you know, there's a QR code on the screen at the moment. So if you are curious in the tool, by all means, scan the QR code and you'll get a sample version of the Health and Safety Index as well. It's a great conversation starter as well for internal reflection. But back to effective leadership behaviours, like care and concern, decision-making and clear expectations, they influence performance. But influence isn't enough on its own. So to truly embed strategy, we need to shift from good intent to clear ownership and real accountability. So it's not enough to just have a plan, as we said. We need to know who owns what. And how do we hold each other to account when things obviously go awry? We've got competing priorities, or new projects are coming online, and we've got to mobilise and support. So, I guess how do we do this? Well, we talked about ownership and accountability. So ownership is about clarity of responsibility. So knowing who's responsible for delivering each part of the strategy. And then the accountability piece is how we ensure it gets done, what checks, feedback loops, and consequences are in place when expectations are or aren't met. So I know this isn't a poll, but we'd just like to maybe pause and reflect for a moment. So how does your organisation ensure accountability, just on that scale? But yeah, so what systems or behaviours ensure people are following through? We spoke before around, Nicole, you have Monday, project management tool. We have Monday as well. Personally, or in our organisation, we like a RACI. So we assign owners in Monday, and then we allocate all our actions out. So each action has an owner and a dedicated deadline and time allocated to that as well. So we build ownership through our project management tool, and with the defined deadlines, we're able to set clear expectations on timeframes and priorities. But Nicole, how does your organisation define ownership and accountability?
I think, like a lot of organisations, we also use a RACI, but in terms of absolute and assumed accountability, that is still very much a work in progress. I think that's a really hard nut for organisations to crack, if I'm honest, and I'm sure many on the call would probably agree. Next year, we'll spend some time developing what I call sort of more capable safety leaders through some interactive learning. But what we wanted to do this year is not miss the opportunity to start some foundational work or foundational steps to kind of set the scene. So our senior operational leaders all have a very lead-focused safety goal, which really emphasises participation in safety activities, not reduction in injury frequency rates. So it's very lead-focused, not lag-focused. We use our governance frameworks again to really define the roles and responsibilities of each of our layered HSE committees. And accountability is not just about leaders either. So if we're talking about how do we drive employee accountability, which I think is equally as important and was a key sort of recommendation perhaps that came through our safety culture survey results, was how do we build accountability of our broader kind of workforce or employee group, and we're doing that also through making hazard reporting, as simple as that is, accessible to all employees, whether they have access to our operating system or not. So we have built the ability within the Always Safe app that you saw a little bit earlier for all employees to be able to raise hazards. So to gain ownership and obviously to meet that inherent responsibility of identifying and reporting issues, as they're identifying them. And that's working fairly well so far.
I think you talked about positive HSE interaction from your leaders. I really like that. It's in a previous life, we used to call it walk the talk, and it was really getting our leaders out there and having those positive safety conversations and getting at the forefront versus, as you said, lag, which is really good, I think, even from an engagement perspective as well. We'll lead now into our last poll. I'm sure as Christina is going to just, jump on there, she is. So probably just, whilst you guys are reading that, so it's what part of today's webinar did you find really insightful? So we obviously started with how to win. So we unpacked how to focus your effort. So practical tools like the keep, stop, start approach, around segmenting examples. We used contractors and critical control management. Might not be your areas, but can apply it to different areas within your business. The message there, I think, is don't try to fix everything. It's really honing in on focus where it matters the most. We then obviously explored capability and capacity. So recognizing that successful strategy doesn't sit in a plan. It lives in your people, your systems, and your ability to deliver. So it's getting the balance right between demands versus supply, not headcount, but capability, technology, and time. And finally, obviously, we looked at methods of influence and building a strong business case to leading with credibility and creating shared ownership, from the C-suite down to frontline workers as well. It's making sure that it's clear accountability and interactive with safety leadership as well.
It's been amazing so far. I've really, really, really enjoyed today's chat. In the poll, though, while I wait for a few more people to log their responses. Okay, cool. They're coming up now. 28%, which is, it's now 32%. The most insightful part people are finding is the effective business cases. I absolutely loved those real world experiences. And I think having those is an integral part to actually really put into place the theory which you're talking about, Rachel, versus the practical with it, Nicole, and it just proves that it's all valid and it can work and we can do this. So it's very exciting stuff. But yeah, no, I think if we keep that going there. Yeah, no, effective business cases followed closely by supply versus demand balance. So thank you so much, guys.
I appreciate that. It's really good. I think back on what you're saying, Christina, as well, it's those real life experiences and the practicality. It's like we've got some really good themes and frameworks together, but how that actually works in organizations, in industries, actually seeing that tangible example really helps obviously tie everything back together. So really appreciate Nicole on the line and jumping on board to co-host today. But in that, we do have some offers for you as well. We do have a self-paced and guided strategy for safety course. So there is a QR code on your screen at the moment. If you are interested in the accelerated course, please do register there. It covers a few areas. We do have some templates as well if you just want to, if you're at the point where it's just self-paced, or if you're kind of like, we really do need some help, you can also reach out to us there. But yeah, that is our webinar. Back to you, Christina.
Thank you so much, Rachel and Nicole. Honestly, it's been incredible. Just to quickly wrap up, I know we've reached the time, but I just really want to reiterate some of the key messages that you brought across was like being resilient and making sure that we actually take the time to celebrate those small wins, and just to remember that culture change takes time. It's not going to happen overnight, and we need to, as cliche as the saying is, trust the process, but you really do need to do that and just back yourself when it comes to this change, and know that being resilient will actually help you affect real change, and it's just going to make all the difference. So again, Rachel, Nicole, thank you so much for taking the time to present to us today. I hope you're all going to join us for the final session of the Strategy for Safety webinar next week. So same time next week. Measure what matters, track inputs, not just outputs. I've recorded today's session as well, so I will pop that up onto our YouTube, our website. We'll pop it onto our social media channels, as well as email you all a link with all of the QR codes, the slides, and some links, especially to more information on the trigger governance model. I know a lot of people in the chat have asked about that. So we'll get all of that information out to you. If you have any questions, please reach out to either myself, the guys at FEFO, or Journey Beyond. I'm sure they'd be happy to help. But again, thank you so much for joining, and we'll chat to you next week.